Welcome to JGTCR. I'm Cope, and today we are taking a look at the new engine swaps available after update 1.63 on GT7. Let's get into it. In this video, we will provide a quick tune sheet and some commentary on how the vehicle performs post-swap. Please keep in mind that these are preliminary tunes intended to stabilize the vehicles enough to be drivable until we get around to tuning them in the tuner series also available on this channel. Now I ain't got time for dilly-dally or jibber-jabber, so I'm gonna hit you hard and I'm gonna hit you fast. So be ready to capture those tune sheets and away we go. The BAC Mono engine swap is sure to frustrate many, as it is just too peaky in nature to be tamed with just a few tweaks. What it all comes down to is that this really needs some custom gearing to make it handle better. But unfortunately, this is beyond the scope of what we are doing here today. For now, our patch tune has extended the gear ratios via top speed, and while that top speed may seem ludicrous, it serves us well in the meantime. The handling is both over and understeerish depending on how we drive, but it is manageable as long as we are sensible on inputs. The power still comes on too heavy and will cause the tail to step, even in third gear onwards at full throttle driving. However, even mild throttle modulation helps immensely. This could be a very decent swap with a couple of hours spent in tuning. Being that the Citroën BX is front-wheel drive, it makes the engine swap very torque-steery and understeery by extension. The power and power delivery has been mitigated by pushing the gear ratios via top speed and adding lots of ballast up front. It's very clear to see that with more tweaking to the gearing and a bit of moving around of the ballast, this will be a front-engine, front-wheel drive weapon. For now, the BX handles well enough if we modulate the throttle even just a tiny bit. But going foot to the floor just causes copious amounts of wheel spin and lack of control. But as it stands in its current state, it is quite rapid and a very decent engine swap. The new engine swap in this Dodge Challenger is a fairly level-headed entry once we wind out the gears and stabilize the tail end. The handling can feel understeerish when we have grip, but it's more than manageable, and it helps when we break traction as the steering isn't too snappy. The power still comes on hard, and we will need to feather the throttle in first and second gear. Third can also slip, but it's much more mild. Overall, this is a decent swap, but we will need to pin the tail end a bit more before it can reach its full potential. The Expo has been the easiest swap to manage in the update so far. This KTM takes to the new engine extremely well, especially when compared to the BAC Mono, which also gets the same engine. The handling is quite reasonable, though somewhat understeerish. However, this is a small price to pay for the increased stability when cornering. The power does come on aggressively, but the tune and gearing helps keep it in check. There is a considerable amount of wheel spin in the lower two gears, but it is very manageable overall. The KTM Expo is one of the best chassis to get this engine swap to date. Even with the gearing pushed out considerably, this Nissan Silvia S15 still has a snappy and erratic tail end. Custom gearing is definitely needed, but for now it is manageable. The handling works well on throttle in the lower quarter of the rev range, but once it gets higher than that, the tail end wants the mambo, and that is when it gets snappy tom at the rear. The power seems boggy down low and peaky up high, so knowing when to modulate and when to drop the hammer helps to stay on top of any unwanted behavior. I have to say, I'm not sure about this swap. It may take some unorthodox methods to pin this one down, but I guess that's something we'll find out in due course. If we wish to wrangle and saddle this Toyota Corolla, we need to use some very unorthodox methods. The major issue we face is that the tail end is always wanting to whip around on us. This tends to happen more on braking than acceleration, but both are equally lethal when in full effect. We have waited and tilted the chassis towards the rear, and it seems to have done wonders for this chassis. And yes, it has lots of understeer, but it beats the tail snap kicking us in the head anytime we want to brake or turn. This swap is strange, and it's hard to gauge if it will come round and be decent or increasingly problematic with more tune time. After driving the fully modified, factory-engined Land Cruiser, I was expecting quite a bit from this swap, but I have to say I was sorely disappointed. This swap has made the suspension extremely sloppy, so the front end bobs around like a buoy out at sea no matter how hard we make the front. The handling is very understeerish, especially when on throttle, so expect to be pulled broadside when we exit turns. The power, while over 1,000 horsepower, does not seem to get this chunky monkey up and running as quickly as one would expect. This engine swap ends up being very sloppy and wobbly all round, and it ain't pretty. So again, this may be another one that frustrates many. The Toyota Yaris gets the same engine swap and the same issues as the Corolla. Yes, that's right, it's tail slides galore. And while we may have subdued some of this trait, there is still plenty to go around and cause problems for us if we get too excited on inputs. The handling is most certainly tarmac rally spec. It will slide the tail at any opportunity. This drive gets old quickly, but there is a slide nature built into this chassis that is really hard to shake. The power doesn't seem aggressive, but it is. It will be sliding and we won't even know it until we try to turn. The Toyota Yaris goes in the same bucket as the Corolla. It is uncertain if it will come good in time. The engine swap in the Toyota 86 GT has a lot of mid-range to top-end torque. When power comes on full song, it can disrupt the suspension and kick the tail end. Tuning and gearing has helped quite a bit, but this issue is still mildly persistent. The handling is a bit on the understeer side. This is a sacrifice we have made to gain more traction from the tail end. While this 86 steers well, it can still feel a bit lazy up front. The power comes on hard and squeals the tyres right at the top of the rev range. We must remain vigilant on inputs, as a tiny slip can be a big deal if it catches us off guard. Overall, this is a decent swap, but once again needs a bit more time spent on the tune to pin it down. The VW Polo is another front-wheel drive entry, so we can expect more torque steer and understeer from this chassis. Once again, gearing and ballast is our best friend when tuning the Polo. The handling is decent if we modulate the throttle. Unfortunately, there is a lot of wheel spin to contend with, so we will need to have a PhD in throttle feathering to make it stick. This VW ends up being a lot of work to drive, and the payoff just doesn't really seem worth it. This may change with more time on the tune sheets, but as it stands, this engine swap clocks in at borderline subpar. And there you have it, a quick rundown and review of all the new engine swaps available on GT7 after update 1.63. The tune sheets provided should be enough to stabilize these vehicles enough to use them in races. But again, if you would like to see some more fleshed out tunes, keep an eye out for the tuner series also available on this channel. And that's all we have for you today, so until next time, keep racing!